Today, I'm joined by Michael McCready, who is the managing partner of McCready Law, a powerhouse personal injury and workers' compensation firm that has scaled from a solo practice to a team of 160 professionals with 20 attorneys. Over the last 30 years, Michael has built a reputation for being at the absolute forefront of legal technology and change management while maintaining a culture that rejects the stuffy lawyer stereotype. Today, we will be diving into how Michael managed the leap from a one-man shop to a massive operation, and why he believes that the human touch is the only way for a law firm to survive in the coming wave of private equity and AI. We will also get into why he thinks that doing a good job is actually a terrible marketing plan, and how he tracks his return on investment across a 160-person firm. Michael, welcome to the Girl Switch.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alex. It's my pleasure.
Now, can you take us to the early days when you started as a solo practitioner and decided to expand? What was it like? What was the decision to start planning to build a bigger firm, and what were the early days like?
Sure. So I started my firm in 1999. So that's 27 years ago, somewhere around there. It's been a long time. It was just myself before cell phones. It was just myself and my briefcase, and grew like many other small businesses did at the time. Eventually hired a secretary and then a paralegal and then an associate attorney. And the growth has continued from there. It's really taken off in the last 8 or 10 years, primarily because of the way that the law and the way that you acquire cases has changed.
Mm.
But lots of lessons I've learned along the road.
They say in terms of lessons that, behind every warning sign, there is a lesson. So when you started growing, did you make any mistakes that formed the way you practice, the law today, the way you hire and manage the culture internally? What were some of those memories that formed your practice today?
Sure. When I talk to a young attorney or a anyone who's wanting to start out on their own, the first advice that I give to people is to hire a bookkeeper to make sure that your books are set up properly. When I started, it was just a checkbook, and then even when we went to QuickBooks, it was just a check register. It took me years to unwind all the mess of the finances. And if I had just gotten them, set up properly at the very beginning, it would have made life a lot easier. And your books are everything. They're your revenue, your expenses. They have a story to tell if you have the right information in the right format. So I would say that. I would also say that, traditionally people think that if you do a good job for clients, that all of a sudden, people will be knocking down your door and you'll have more clients than you know what to do with.
Hmm.
And that's not the way that it works in real life. Sure, if you do a good job for a client, that goodwill may last for a little while, but that is not a marketing strategy. That is simply a
Hmm.
business strategy. You should always do your best for your clients, but don't rely on the fact that you did a good job and that your clients love you as a marketing technique. And then the final thing that kind of ties in with both of these is that you have to understand is that the law is a business and it's a customer service business. Now, our services are legal services, but our customers, our clients, they view us as they would any other vendor, whether it's Target or Amazon or Starbucks. They want a sense of feeling customer service and satisfaction outside of whether you're a good attorney or not. So those are things that I think a lot of people, especially attorneys, they just don't quite grasp. And you have to if you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. It is a business, like you said, and has to be treated as such, but yet law school doesn't really prepare lawyers for that. Do you think it's something that improved over the years, and do you see a more business savvy younger attorneys today, or is it still something that they need to experience to really learn that side of being a lawyer?
Yeah, I do think that the younger generation, because they've grown up with the internet, they've grown up with cell phones, they've grown up now with social media. and the next generation growing up with AI. So, each of these things really helps inform a lawyer. And the more tools that you have, forget about the legal knowledge. There's lots of really, really smart lawyers out there, but it takes more than that. It takes understanding the tools at your disposal, and like I said earlier, understanding that yes, it is a profession, and we have an obligation to our clients to get the best result. But if you can't make payroll, you don't have a business, and you don't have clients to serve.
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned before that doing a good job is a benchmark. It's not a marketing strategy. In your early days, as you were going through this and learning it yourself, what were the most successful marketing campaigns? Although I'm guessing you haven't called them that in the day. What were the activities that generated more new business for you and helped you grow when you started?
It's interesting because some of the things that I started with 25 years ago, the same fundamentals are there. So 25 years ago, I started a mailing list. Now, back then, a mailing list was a literal mailing list, and we would send out, holiday cards and birthday cards or newsletters, just things to keep us front of mind. That mailing list has changed into an email list. So anyone who contacts our firm, whether we end up representing them or not, goes into our database. And we want to constantly remarket to these people because although we might not have been able to help them in this instance, maybe we can in the future. And I learned this lesson back once again in the old days when we had in-person intake and paper forms that people would fill out in the waiting room. One of the questions I would always ask is, have you been in an accident or injured before? And if they said yes, when I was talking to them, I would ask because I thought maybe I'll get another case. Maybe it happened within the last year or two. And then they said, "Oh, I was in a car accident, 3, 4, 10 years ago." I said, "Who was your lawyer?" "I don't remember." That's terrible, right? And I started recognizing is that even if you do a great job for someone, that you cannot expect people to remember who you are. And the marketing lesson out of this is you never want your clients to forget who you are, and keeping front of mind. We sent out, and we still send out some physical mailers around the holiday season, and I think we sent out over 25,000 this year. And then our email list, I'm sure it's over 100,000 emails. Now, does that mean that everybody opens up our newsletter or our announcements? Of course not. We don't expect that. But it's a way of staying in front of people without having to spend, tens of thousands of dollars for a television commercial or a billboard or some other way. So those marketing lessons I learned very early on, we still apply. There's still an economical way of marketing that you don't need to spend enormous sum of money to get your message out there.
Certainly. Like you said, the channels can change. It could be not a physical mail, it could be an email, but the message and the thought still matters a lot. And earlier we were talking about the approachability. What have you seen maybe in your colleagues in the industry as a mistake in that regard when they're not approachable and you saw that and you thought like, we have to make sure that at your firm things are done differently and everybody is more welcomed. And then in the future, if somebody asks your client who represented you, they remember.
So, Alex, one of our firm values is approachability. And approachability at our firm is we want to break the stereotype of stuffy lawyers. We are very good at what we do and we take our jobs seriously, but we don't take ourselves so seriously. We don't believe in, holding ourselves out to be better than anyone else. We are no different than our clients. We just went to school a little bit longer and have a specialty that hopefully we can help them. That's something, like I said, it's a value, a firm value that is very important to us. I think that if you ask 10 people, they would probably give you a stereotype of what a lawyer looks like. a
Hmm.
suit and tie and briefcase and yeah, we have to wear a suit and tie to court, but we don't broadcast. I would never want to be walking down the street and someone's be able to pick me out and say he's a lawyer. That's not what we stand for, and there is a certain stereotype.
How have you been using technology to continue to break those stereotypes and engage and be approachable with the internet?
Excuse me.
You're good.
So technology has been fantastic in terms of lowering the barrier for people to feel like they can engage with us. And it's been primarily social media. We're
Hmm.
very active on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And what we try to show is, what we're really like. Okay. What we're like around the office, what we're like when we're walking in to get a cup of coffee in the morning. And it really humanizes us. And YouTube shorts and YouTube videos, a lot of people feel like they already know us by the time that they actually reach out to us. And that's important. Most people may call a lawyer once or twice in their lives. And it's usually when something bad happens, some kind of serious trauma in your life. And people have this stereotype and they're nervous and maybe they don't want to reach out. We want to make sure that any client, any potential client, feels comfortable with reaching out to us. And if we can help them, we're more than happy to do so. But that all ties in with approachability. So technology and social media have been very, very good to show, who we really are. All the lawyers and the whole team in my office.
I know a lot of lawyers that will be listening. They're hesitant to be on social media because they think they're not presenting their best self, which I think prevents them from showing their authentic self. And you seem to have handled that. But as you're hiring and you were expanding your team, did you find resistance with that aspect of your culture, or were you specifically hiring for somebody who already has that?
Yeah, so my firm has grown large enough now. We've got 20 lawyers. Listen, not every one of them wants to be on social media, and that's fine. I certainly would not push someone into social media who's not comfortable. But having said that, comfort is the whole idea. It doesn't need to be this polished video. You just be yourself. People want to know what your life is like. People want to know what it's like being a lawyer. They want to know what it's like with your cases or, commentary on anything that's happening in the news or in current events. It's no different than meeting somebody out for a cup of coffee. What kind of conversations would you have? That's what you should focus on with social media. And no, your videos are not going to go viral. And that's not necessarily the idea. It's
Hmm.
just to be consistent and to be out there and let people feel comfortable knowing who you are before they decide to reach out and hire you as an attorney.
Mm. When you're looking at different skill sets, and again, whether it's, social media or anything else, growing the firm the way you have from solo practitioner to where you are right now, how do you think about the skill sets and expanding what the team has so that you together as a firm are very well rounded and you have different interests represented? How do you go about that?
Yeah, no, that's really important. I mean, first, there's a threshold of intelligence and success, right? You need to have done well in school and shown the capacity to be a good lawyer. That's a given. But then we look for other kinds of intangible things. We look for people that have drive, that have ambition, that are creative. And all of these are tied into our firm culture. We want attorneys that are going to fit in with what we stand for as a firm and the people that they're going to work with. In fact, with our young attorneys starting out, we have a whole progression mapped out for them so they know exactly what to expect if you make this for your career. And when you're a young attorney, there are things that are required of you that some people would be surprised at the fact that we're requiring our lawyers to do this. So, one of which is every lawyer in my firm has to be involved in some outside activity,
Mhm.
whether it's coaching your kid's soccer team or participating in a volleyball league or teaching Sunday school. I mean, you have to get out there. It is the
Mhm.
way we want well-rounded people.
Mhm.
We require all of attorneys to get one Google review per month. Now, is
Hmm.
that going to move the needle? No, but what it's doing is it's telling our attorneys that this is something that is important for the firm. We also require them to originate one case or client. That's it. If you
Hmm.
don't have a relative or a neighbor or someone, now, will that one case make a huge difference in the firm? Probably not. But what we're doing is, showing young attorneys that these things are important, that it's not just how good of a lawyer you are or how many depositions you've taken or how many court appearances that you've had. Now, those are important, but what we're trying to do is to build well-rounded people who happen to be lawyers. And
Hmm.
then this groundwork that we're laying when they are young attorneys, it becomes much more important as they proceed through their career. So, the contacts that you make now as a young attorney, in 20 years, these same lawyers are now going to be managing partners of their own firm or judges. And the clients that you meet today can be referring you cases in the future. So, all of these things, and teaching is very important. That's one of
Hmm.
the things that we value in the firm. And so, even as a young attorney, we require them to present to the paralegals on some kind of issue that they face all the time. Getting back to your question about what we look for when we hire, we're looking for someone that is going to make this law firm their home and they're going to last their entire career. We have very little turnover of the attorneys, and they can see exactly what the future holds for them. They're going to be handling small cases when they first start, but they see what the more seasoned attorneys and the cases that they're handling. And when they get to that level, when they get to that experience, it's very transparent. Those are the cases that they'll be handling.
That's a very interesting way to break it. And I recently had a conversation with somebody that was talking about importance of focusing on the process, not the outcome. Because sometimes you cannot control the outcome, but the process and following the process you can absolutely control. And I liked your example with getting, one new case and one new review per month because those are small steps, but like you said, they build good habits
Right.
that make for better people, members of community, better lawyers, and then by the time they become more senior, they have the right habits and skill sets and a wonderful client base as well that is happy to work with them and refer more work.
Yeah, and and we look at that, we view that way with everybody in the firm. We When we hire someone, when we let someone into our world, that's the way that we look at it. Is
Mm.
when we hire someone, we are letting someone into our world. We want to make sure that it's a good fit. That the culture is there, is that it is a good fit for them in our firm, and that we're a good fit for them. Over the years, we've passed on, many very qualified applicants in different positions because we just knew it wasn't going to be the right fit. And the ones that we do extend an invitation to join us, by and large, it's wonderful that it's
Hmm.
my firm is the place that they have always looked for, right? And that is deliberate, and that is the culture that we have built, and we're very protective of it.
Certainly seems to be working. I want to go back to the aspect of having to coach a sports team or being involved in that way in a community. Could you maybe give one example of unintended consequences when either, maybe a piece of work came out or something else happened that reinforced for you and for your team that it is important part of the culture and has to be protected?
Well, certainly. I mean, part of it is that being out in the community is the best way to get possible clients. Being out in the community is a way of exhibiting our firm value of approachability, but it also is part of our firm value, which is community. Okay. And we feel very strongly that this law firm wouldn't be where it is today without its clients, without the community. And it's our obligation to give back. And so that's something that we feel very strongly about. not because we're looking for anything in return. It's because it's the right thing to do. And we are fortunate, we are blessed in the position that we're in. And it's our obligation to give back to the community and to give back to those that without the clients, we wouldn't be anywhere. So that ties into the requirement that they get involved in some outside activity. Now, many of my lawyers are involved with, you know, my partner's on the board of directors to Make a Wish Foundation. You
Mm.
know, wonderful organization. So, although we don't specify what they should get involved in, by and large, they're getting involved in activities that make a difference. I was for years on the board of a pro bono legal aid clinic, and was very proud of my work there. I didn't get paid for it. I did it because I was giving back. It was meaningful to me and to the firm. We don't necessarily look at a tangible benefit, but it's just something that's part of our fabric.
Strong beliefs that justified and stood the test of time. Would you have maybe an example of something that earlier on, as you were building the firm, seemed very important to you, but with more experience, you actually changed your mind on something that was fundamental?
Yeah, results, right? When you look at any law firm's website, and mine is guilty as well, but we try to change it a little bit, is results. Oh, $1 million for this or $1 million for that. And those kind of results are important, but very few people have $1 million case. And I think what's much more important is the customer experience, the client experience, and reviews. When you read hundreds of these reviews that clients are just saying how much they enjoyed the experience, because you see, clients don't know whether you're a good lawyer or not. Okay, they don't have
Hmm.
they do know when your phone calls are returned. They do know when they're treated with dignity and respect. They do know that they're kept informed. Those are all the intangible things that we try to deliver in the client experience. Now, being a good lawyer, yeah, we're good lawyers too. But I think that simply being a good lawyer is not enough. That's definitely a lesson I learned from early on. I thought that all you had to do was be a good lawyer. And there's so much more that goes into being successful than simply being.
What are some of the flexibilities that you had to fight to retain as your team grew? Because as a smaller group of people, it's easier to change things and be flexible. But as a larger organization, of course, there are more challenges. So what are maybe some of the growing pains, or what some of the things that you were fighting and still fighting hard for to retain in terms of having that as a part of DNA of the firm?
The hardest thing for me to accept was the time that I had to realize that I was a boss and I was not just one of the employees.
Hmm.
And that was painful. I mean, these were when the firm was much smaller. These are my friends. These are my colleagues. Yes, I'm the boss, but I wanted to go out with beers on a Friday afternoon with them. And I did that for a long time. And then there just came to a point when I had to come to the realization that it's really much better if they go off on their own
Hmm.
and without the boss there, and that there needed to be some kind of distance between me as the owner and the boss,
Hmm.
and then the rest of the team. And that's an important lesson. And you know, it was disappointing, but it was the right
Hmm.
thing to do. And certainly at the level that I'm at right now and the size of the firm that I'm at, it's absolutely essential. And then, of course, COVID changed so many things. Many, I think almost half of my workforce works 100% remote.
Hmm.
And we've got many team members that are international team members. So, certainly you can't expect to have that camaraderie between myself and all the employees, especially with the distance.
Hmm. Did the first international hire come around the COVID and lockdown, or is that something that you were planning for?
No, it was before. Another one of our firm values, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but that's how important firm values really are. But one of our firm values is technology. And
Hmm.
so even before COVID, we were 100, it sounds funny now, but we were 100% paperless
Hmm.
and everybody logged into our system. We all had voice over IP phones. So it didn't matter where anyone was physically. I think I had maybe three offices before COVID. So we were running, different offices. We were doing Zoom meetings, and then COVID came. And a Friday afternoon, I sent everybody home with their voice over IP phones. And Monday, we were up and working. So even before COVID, we had a small group of international team members, and they worked, and they're part of the firm just like everyone else. Now, COVID and working remotely and working from home and hybrid certainly accelerated that. And but we were very well prepared. I mean, no one was prepared for COVID. I don't want to sound that way, but technologically, COVID did not hurt our office. We're able to function completely, and since that period of time, we've really grown out our international team members, and they're very very valuable contributors to the office.
And I think you were able to do that again because of the culture that you've built. Because I fear for a lot of smaller firms, even to hire somebody at one or two office locations is a long training period of coaching and getting somebody fit in the culture. But it sounds like it was such a big part of your DNA from the beginning that when somebody joins the team, that's not a problem, and that allowed you to tap into the talent worldwide.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why, that's one of the reasons behind our growth, especially since COVID. More and more law firms are requiring people to come back to the office. And there are some really high quality people that don't want to go back to the office. And we're more than willing to welcome them in. So,
Mhm.
these other law firms who have let talented people go simply because they required them to return to the office, that's been to our benefit. Like I said, we've hired some amazing talents that worked at very good law firms with lots of experience, and they can work for us, completely remote, 100%. I mean, we've got team members all over the country and all over the world. It makes no difference. And here's the thing that a lot of business owners don't quite understand is that whether someone's in the office or whether they're remote, there still needs to be a certain level of supervision.
Mhm.
And you can't tell me just because someone's in the office next door to you that they're working and being productive.
Right.
There are certainly ways to tell whether someone's productive. And we measure productivity more on results than just numbers, right?
Mhm.
Somebody can be busy but not be productive. We're looking for people that will do their job and be productive and be efficient, and we try to measure that by the outcomes rather than simply numbers pushing paper. But so whether someone's sitting next to you or down the hall or on another floor or in another city, another state, another country, it makes no difference. That supervision still needs to be there. And also, the culture of people wanting to do their job. You know, the expression, when the cat's away, the mice will play. I mean,
Mhm.
there are a lot of businesses that's true. If the owner's not there, everybody's going to goof off and nothing's going to get done. That's a culture issue. Okay, that shouldn't happen, and you don't need to be an authoritarian and micromanage. You just have to build a culture that everybody understands they have a job to do. This is what's required of them. We're all grown-ups here. You're being paid to do this job, and as long as you do what you need to do, you should be treated with respect. But it becomes a lot easier when you have that type of culture that you've built, and it's not something that comes overnight. It's something that takes time and intentionality.
You definitely have to be intentional about it. And I've seen firsthand examples when, if the culture is that, let's say, partners have to stay late in the office, there would be some that spend most of their day reading news and doing their online shopping, only to actually start working in the evening. And I feel like the working from home or hybrid is the opposite end of that, because you're motivated to actually finish your work. And then if you want to spend your time with the family and be part of community and do something more enjoyable than just, being in your seat because that's the culture, everybody's better off.
Yeah, no, I agree, Alex. Now, not everyone can work remotely. I'll be honest with you. So some people just can't do it. Some people need the human interaction. Some people are too distracted. And we've worked through those hurdles. But there are a lot of people that working from home is probably even better for them. So most, we have people all over the country. Obviously, they are 100% work from home. But where I have my offices, Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, and Minneapolis, most of the offices there, they work on a hybrid schedule. So it might be 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. And that's not dictated by me or by human resources. It's just what people are comfortable with. People
Mhm.
like coming into the office. They like having that flexibility, and it's worked out pretty well. Once again, is that having the ability to work from home a couple days a week is an attractive feature. When other law firms are saying, no, you need to be here 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Right. It's good, like you said, that everybody is a grown up and everybody is able to manage and figure out what works for them, and that way you have a good culture. Michael, looking back to everything that you've built so far and you're still growing, when it comes to driving your business, getting new clients, obviously you mentioned things like sending mail and remembering and being in touch. What were some of the highest output activities that you've done in terms of driving new relationship and new business?
Well, as any business grows, as the owner, you have to realize what is the best use of your time.
Hmm.
And I was a really good lawyer, but I am a better managing partner. And I've
Hmm.
got really smart lawyers that can do the legal work. And so I haven't handled cases in quite a few years. I'm focusing on what I do best, and that is developing relationships and bringing in business. And one of the ways I've been able to grow is focusing not so much on individual cases or clients, but developing relationships with people that can send me lots of business,
Hmm.
many cases, and repeat business. So a lot of lawyers, a lot of law firms will refer their personal injury cases to my firm. So I spend a lot of time with them. Doctors, there's a lot of doctors out there who see a lot of people who have been injured, cultivating those relationships, and then overseeing the office in and of itself to make sure that that the culture remains there, and that everybody is motivated, hiring the right people. I still do a lot of mentoring
Hmm.
and coaching to make sure that we get the best out of people. So I also do a lot of speaking around the country and presenting on law office management, and now more recently, AI and technology. So
Hmm.
that's what I spend my time on, and that is the best use of my time. The best use of my time is not sitting at a desk, preparing for a killer cross examination.
I want to double click on that idea of not only building those one-on-one relationship, but the relationship, like you said, with doctors or whatever for different law firms could be the person that is connected to your potential clients, and then you're making one-to-many connections. To give a specific example, we've recently been talking to a firm that we are starting different marketing initiatives. But when we looked at their book of business, 85% of their cases were coming from referrals from other law firms, yet nobody was proactively actually pursuing those relationships as a marketing strategy, which was interesting. In your experience, because you have thought about this and you're already doing this, when you want to build a relationship with, let's say, a doctor, how do you go about it? How do you make sure that it's not just a one-off conversation, but again, you're being approachable, you've been engaged with them, and you memorable for them?
Yeah, generally speaking, I will be the one that will have the introductory meeting or to start the relationship. What I explain to everyone is I've enjoyed meeting you, but I hope that we never have to talk again because that means that your office and my office are working together seamlessly.
Hmm.
So the only time that I want to see you is when it's on a social visit, when we go out for dinner or for cocktails just to catch up. And it's a lot easier to maintain those relationships if your respective offices are working together well. And we have built out at my firm, a lot of processes and procedures to make sure that those relationships are maintained. So I spend my time very limited establishing the relationship, and then I just let my team take over. So, we have a whole department that deals only with referral relationships, and then we cultivate them. We do things over the course of the year for our referral relationships, and of course, we send out a holiday gift, and we acknowledge them if we read them in the newspaper or read them online, like something happened. It also ties into social media, so we give them a lot of shouts out about and back and forth. So all those kind of things just to tighten up the relationship. But to your point, Alex, I can't imagine having that much business and not intentionally work on maintaining those relationships.
I think misconception is that the referrals is passive, something that happens to you. But
No,
like you said with your department, it's something that you need to actively be involved in.
and the way that I explain it to my team is, this individual is going to form a relationship with some lawyer. And once they do, it's going to be nearly impossible for us to change that relationship. I mean, unless that other law firm really screws things up. But, I still believe that this is, an interpersonal business and people do business based on relationships. And if we are not the law firm, it's going to be nearly impossible for us to break that relationship. So what we want to do is make sure that we're getting in on the ground floor and treating these referral sources in a way that they've never been treated before. So our clients are our referring partners. We really do look at it that way. That it's not just an individual client, B2C, business to consumer. We have a B2B, business to business marketing as well. They're completely different.
Certainly. One of the other, of course, marketing channel for law firms is advertisement. What's your take on the state of paid digital advertisement and uh, non-digital advertisement for law firms as well? And what's your prediction for the 2026 and beyond?
Well, I think that historically, digital advertising has been the great equalizer, is that you could do digital advertising and get cases like anyone else, and get cases that may not have been available to you in the past. Cases that where reputation and referral networks, digital advertising changed a lot of that. And if there is no prior connection with a law firm, then digital is the way to go. And that has been the lifeblood of a lot of law firms over the years. In the last year or two, I believe that is changing because legal digital advertising is becoming more and more expensive, and it's costing more and more money to acquire a case. Your cost per acquisition on cases is going up dramatically. So if you have to pay more to get a case, now you're not paying directly, but if you have to spend more marketing money to get that case, well, that means that your profit is going to go down or your revenue is going to. So, because of that, law firms really need to be focusing now on what they can do to lower their costs to provide their legal services. And that's going to be primarily with AI. So, if you can reduce the amount of money that it takes for you to handle a case from your staff and your computers and insurance, all of that, if you can reduce the amount of money that it takes to handle a case, well, then maybe you can start paying more for those cases. But the cost to get a case, especially from digital and digital marketing, is going up so dramatically that if you just keep your expenses where they're at, you're going to get squeezed out of the market.
Certainly. And when we were talking earlier, one of the things that you said is the effect of private equity on the legal landscape as well, and how it impacts the advertisement budgets that lead to the outcome that you just described. If you might maybe want to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest issues with legal advertising is outside money, outside capital, private equity is making its way into the legal field, and they have very deep pockets. And lawyers historically have made very good profit margins. Private equity is looking at that. Private equity is happy with much lower profit margins. So think about this, is that if a lawyer could make, $5,000 a case, and private equity comes in, and all they care about is making $1,000 a case, which is still a lot of money for private equity. Well, they have a lot more. They've got $4,000 to play with. And you know where they're going to put that money? They're going to put it into marketing. So private equity is having a huge impact on legal advertising and the future of the legal profession as it has been known. Now, Alex, in the UK, you've had private ownership of law firms for 20, I don't know, 20 plus years. And in the United States, that's not the case, but it's rapidly moving in that direction. And that's why I'm a student of England and Australia. I'm watching, what
Mhm.
you all went through, because that's probably what's going to happen here in the United States.
It's an interesting way to analyze the trends because the countries do tend to copy each other, and there are some interchangeable lessons. But to go back to the advertising piece, I think you're absolutely right that if there is a model that allows a firm to spend more on advertising, they will push their competition out. And one of the antidotes that we as a marketing agency seen is not to try to advertise the immediate engagement, but to advertise to inform the market, to serve the community, and to start building the relationship before they need a lawyer. I'm curious if you, from your practice, have seen examples of somebody doing that successfully when, just like with being involved in the community, there are digital initiatives that help to create that community, whether it's B2B with referrals or whether it's potentially with the future clients directly.
Yeah, no, I believe in educational marketing, educating people, giving people things for free. An educated consumer is better. But look what you're up against. You're up against, billboards and television and, lawyers saying, oh, we're the best and we're the strongest and we'll fight for you. And there's just a lot of noise out. But I do think that there is and unfortunately that noise is successful. It's not my style of marketing, but it obviously is successful to some people. I do think that there is another path, like you were saying, is that to be I hate to use the word dignified, but a different a different approach, a knowledge based approach. Once again, that's why we show who we are. We're trying to get the public to understand that when you need to shop for a lawyer, you may not want to pick the person with the funniest billboard, right? You may want to do a little bit more research into who you're actually hiring and what the firm is going to do for you. And there is definitely a marketing play and a marketing path. And I think that's what we largely do, or we largely try to do.
With your team, what has been an example of the best marketing relationship you had, whether it's in somebody in-house or somebody that you worked externally that you now think of as a gold standard for what you would like to see?
Well, most of our best marketing is when I'm able to show another law firm exactly how we do things. We are very data driven. I have metrics on everything. I can show them exactly what they need to see. So if you were to refer your cases here, here's exactly what you can expect. And having worked with enough law firms and knowing what law firms want from their referral partner, putting together a marketing material and a marketing pitch. If I can get an appointment with someone and show them how we do things, we usually end up getting them as a client.
What's the next big thing that you as a firm working with where you are in terms of your size right now? What's the big goal that you have for 2026?
Well, I mean, things are changing so rapidly. It's hard to have. I couldn't tell you we have a 5 year plan. I couldn't even tell you if we have a 3 year plan. We're really forecasting out 12 months at a time and seeing what's going to happen. The pace of technological change is so rapid now. I mean, listen, I'm old enough to remember when the internet was really just starting out and people were putting websites up. The people that put websites up first were already ahead of the game. And then, the whole science of SEO, and that took time. Pace of technological change right now with AI is like nothing we've seen before. And it's very difficult to forecast what the legal world is going to look like in 12 months. So what we're trying to do is first stay ahead of any of the changes. We've been very early adopters of AI, and we're trying to keep an eye on all the new cutting edge things. And where we are right now, by the time you see this podcast, or you've seen it, it was a year, this may be like, wow, I can't believe he said that was cutting edge. Well, where the world is going is agentic AI. And basically, that is AI that will execute tasks, routine things. They'll do them the same way every single time. And they will be replacing the work of a lot of humans. And we want to make sure that we take care of our team. We have made sure that everybody in my firm is AI trained. So when these new changes come in, they're prepared for them and prepared to use the tools. Because after all, AI is just a tool. AI will not replace humans.
Right.
The AI, there will always be humans in the loop. But we want to make sure that as a firm, from top to bottom, we're prepared for these changes so we can embrace them and then use them to succeed and get a better result for our clients.
Fantastic. Michael, where can our listeners find more about you and your firm online?
Well, a couple things. One is you should be able to Google me if my SEO company's working on it. If you just search for McCready Law, I better come up or some heads are going to roll. So that's one way. Another way is I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post a lot about especially technology and where it's going and the intersection with technology and law. And I'm not afraid. My email is a pretty easy one, michael@mccreadylaw.com. So lots of ways to reach out and get in touch with me.
Michael, thank you so much for coming today. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure was mine, Alex. Thanks so much.
Thank you.